But first, we're bringing you an urgent story from our bureau chief for Palestine and Israel, Lubna Masarwa. The story of a family in the occupied West Bank forced by Israeli soldiers to choose between two sons. And the bigger story that their tragedy reveals of a suffocating occupation that is disappearing thousands of people into Israeli prisons where torture, rape, and murder are practiced with impunity. Palestinians abused in Israeli prisons are dying in unprecedented numbers due in part to medical neglect, and their bodies are not being returned to their families. At least 101 confirmed deaths since October 2023, the true figure likely to be far higher. This is happening where the world is not watching as the global media speaks of peace in Gaza. So here is the story of Ahmad, whose family were forced to hand him over in exchange for his innocent brother, on charges they were never told, for him to die of causes they do not believe, and his body to be held from them today.
خذوا أخوه وأخذوا أبوه حجزوهم الصبح فلتوهم قالوا بدنا إياه والله جبتوهوش بنصفه بقصفه شو عمل هو تام انك تقصفه شو ساوي 20 سنة ما لحكيش يعمل شيء ردوا أخذوا أخوه انحبس 4 أيام تا سلمناه تا راح أبوه سلموا على سالم تا روح هذاك الوسطاني وأنا اللي سلمته بإيدي أنا اللي سلمته للموت بإيدي
قعد 8 أشهر وعايش ولا اتصال ولا مرة اتصل علينا.
وقفنا له محامي زيارة دفعنا 700 شيكل مشان يزوروا زيارة، كانت 9/8 زيارته واستشهد ب3/8. موتونا تصح لنا دور يزوروا.
أما أجا واحد من منطقة نابلس طلعنا فايتين بقمع الشلب كاي بنساوي هون من بيت أكلنا إنه انضرب كمامي هون ضابطه صار عنده التهابات يعني أكل إيه ما انطناش لا تقرير مثلا شو سبب موته طيب
نفس الشغل مطمنش كلب الواحد إذا ميت يدفنوا بيده ولا لا تعرف إنه هذا قبر إله ما مش حاجزين شو بدهم بيه ومات إذا ما بقولوا مات شو بدكم بيه حاجزينه خلص.
الطيب قاعدين بموتوا بيه والساغس قاعدين بقتلوا بيه يعني طلع السجين اللي ب 100 كيلو برجع 40 يعني مش هو الكل هيك.
الشهداء بس ناخذهم مش بس أنا من كل الأمهات لأنه كلبي مثل قلوبين أكيد.
دي أصعب من واحد يروح ابنه يعني بعد ابنه شو الواحد هو حياته.
MEE's bureau chief in Jerusalem, Lubna Masarwa, says she discovers stories like this every day. She says it's not a ceasefire she's reporting on so much as a slow genocide. And she's here with us today. Lubna, welcome to MEELive. It's a privilege to have you on, really. Watching that video back, the pain of the Taza family, it's heartbreaking just to watch. Can I ask, when you were recording this, what part of the interview affected you most?
I think this is one of the most tragic stories I covered in my career as a journalist. A parent, a mother, and a father that have to hand their son, their youngest son, to the army, and then for him to be killed in the prison. And to be in this grief, thinking that they could save him because the army threatened to strike the house, and also they held his brother, who is a father for 2 children. So the tears, the grief, the despair, and the guilt mostly, it's like a double tragedy for the family. But what mostly touched me were 2 things: to maybe see the father crying in silence. And for us, like, I'm used to see more women in Palestine crying, and seeing him crying was very touching for me. And also the children who were in the room that were listening to the story and crying as well. They miss their uncle. The children of the brother who were released also seem to feel guilt that they have their father back, but their uncle has been killed. And also when I visited the family of another prisoners who were killed, I asked the little boy, what do you want to be when you be older, when you be big boy? And his father said he sees his future ahead of him because his uncle was killed. And then this is like the moments where I wondered about the future of our children and this despair that really I couldn't describe.
This story alone is awful, but in reality, there are countless like it. How widespread are tragedies like this of Palestinians disappearing and dying in Israeli prisons? And what have you learned from people that you've met about what's happening in those prisons and how those people are dying?
Palestinian prisoners, especially in the past 2 years, or let's say since October 7, have been exposed to systematic torture and violence, starvation, and like the prisoners I met describe this. They said there's no word to describe the level of torture they exposed to. Um, One of them told me, for example, when he was arrested in the first few days, he saw one prisoner counting rice seeds, and he counted 7 rice seeds and put in his bucket, and he didn't understand why. But with time, he learned about like the starvation as a tool of torture for the prisoners, the beating, the raids. There's another prisoner I interviewed for this report I made, young Palestinian man, also from area near Jenin, who says that when he asked for a medical treatment, he was shot before he was arrested in the exit of Jenin refugee camp. The doctor who seen him told him that you didn't come here for treating you, but for you to die. And the testimonies I heard from the prisoners in this past year, and I seen many prisoners, they describe horrifying cases and situations, the raids, the beating. One of them told me it's like a butchery place. One time, the guards entered the section and they beating them. He said the blood was in the wall, the blood was in the ground, and it's very systematic. And of course, it's like it's not by accident that they are being tortured and neglected from medical service. It's a policy, and this policy coming from high of the top, from Ben Gvir and many other ministers. Ben Gvir, the national security minister of Israel, himself take footage with the prisoners being in humiliated positions. He posted in social media, so it's a policy. And of course, Israel have, I would say, a full immunity that allows it to go to this level of horrific torture and neglection and violence and abuse that we also know and reported before about sexual abuse.
Is there a risk that the situation is going to get even worse? I mean, you talk about Ben Gvir's influence over the conditions in prison. He is currently pushing through legislation to bring back the death penalty to Israeli prisons. Can you just tell us, specifically, how central is the role of Ben Gvir, and is his influence making the situation you're talking about worse and worse?
During Ben Gvir position, or since Ben Gvir became minister, 101 Palestinian prisoners were killed and died in the Israeli prisons. And this is a big number if we compare to all the other years before. I think there's a bill now in the Knesset that passing first and second steps to allow the execution. And of course, Ben Gvir says that there were about 100 Israeli doctors who volunteered to make the execution. But in fact, even if it's legalized and if it's a formal law or not, the execution is happening. the message that the Israelis receiving in the prison, that you can kill them to death, and they do. They're killing them, and there is no charges, there is no investigation, there is nobody care about, they just know that they can kill Palestinian prisoners, and there is no charge. So there is the execution law is giving a platform for the Israeli security forces to commit such a level of violence that gets you to death in the Israeli system.
But as you're saying, even before this bill has been passed into law, the executions are happening. Lubna,
Israel now is like a jungle. There is no restrictions. There's no restrictions for killing Palestinians. There are no restrictions for terrorizing Palestinians in the West Bank. There's no restrictions of anything. Israel now, like no man land. They're doing everything they want. There is no international law. We know that it's collapsed totally, and we witnessed the genocide and how it was normalized. And this is giving Israel such a green light to commit this crimes that we didn't expect it will get to this level in this time.
Something I learned from your reporting on this, Lubna, as well, is that the bodies of many Palestinians are being withheld by Israeli forces, at least 776, according to the rights group Al-Quds Legal Aid and Rights Centre. That includes, or there's an additional 10 foreign citizens, and it includes at least 88 people who died in Israeli custody. Now, when reading this, I found myself reflecting on the massive diplomatic and media efforts that we've all seen to have the bodies of the Israeli hostages returned by Hamas, right up until last week when the body of the final hostage, Ran Gvir, was returned. Now, there were massive international rescue efforts to see those bodies returned. The world knows how important that is for families. So reading in your reports that hundreds of Palestinians' bodies are being withheld from their families by Israel's army and prison service, I can't help but wonder, where is the global outrage about this?
There is no global outrage, and our pain is not equal as the pain of the Israelis. Releasing the body of Ran Goeli, I listened to the speech of Herzog, the president of the Israeli state, and he said, like, finally, the pieces of our heart can come together and heal. And the mother of Ahmed can't even see the body or her son and to say goodbye to him. So there's a complete gap. To release the body of Ron Goeli from Al-Bach cemetery in Gaza came in the price of bulldozing a whole cemetery of 200 Palestinian bodies who were all over the place. And in Islam, the respect of the body, the respect of the death, is something very high and very valuable. That's why we bury very quickly and we don't wait. So there's a policy of revenge, of holding the Palestinian bodies and keeping the Palestinian mothers and fathers and families in endless grief that they even can't close this cycle. But when it's come to an Israeli hostage, an Israeli body, it's become emotional and feeling. And the mother and the sister and prime minister made a very touching speech in his funeral, the same the president. And this is I think the painful part of our tragedy as a Palestinian, that our pain is not equal. It's not equal.
Lubna,
The bodies are kept. Over 100,000 Palestinian prisoners being tortured, beaten every day. No one speak about them. Almost half of them, by the way, have administrative detention, which is mean no trial, no charge, and you can't see a lawyer. They even don't know why they are in prison.
Lubna, just before we lose you, I would love to hear how you're doing. This, of course, is not just an environment in which you are reporting, it's an environment in which you're living. How are you?
I don't know how to address this question. I don't think it's about me and how I feel. I feel this is a duty to bring the stories of my people, at least that I can do. I told you before earlier today, I want to be even like a doormat, a platform for my people to tell their stories and to bring their pain and their suffering. And for me to sit in front of Ahmad Najah and her and his father and be there, allowing her to tell her story and to cry, this is like the at least we can do as journalists and as Palestinians.
Lubna Masarwa, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you.
The Israeli Prison Service did not respond to MEE's request for comment on the matters raised in Lubna's report. We'll move on now to our next story on the Epstein files, but we would like to ask one thing of you. As the Gaza ceasefire looks to progress to phase 2 and the headlines emit from Trump's Board of Peace, our reporting does not tell a story of peace. It tells a story of occupation and of a genocide continuing behind bars. We need to get these stories heard, so please go to MiddleEastEye.net to read about the underreported reality and share these stories with your networks to make sure they don't get buried. Thank you.